I'm going to start by talking about what I'm not going to be talking about, just briefly, and then I'm going to talk about some of the issues that the companies face, a little bit of the background of the business as a whole, change, lots of change that we've done over the last couple of years. I joined Blackwell's about 2.5 years ago, and it's been quite an emotional roller coaster for both the business and me, I think. Where we are now, where we're getting to, and what the sort of vision is for the future. So to start with, really, I suppose I'm a kind of strange digital director in that I'm quite a Luddite. I'm not very keen on putting in systems for the sake of systems. Shiny things don't interest me very much. I'd have hung on to an old Nokia phone till now, I think, if they were still available properly. So it's not about that. The business has been around since 1879. We've currently got around 35 full-time shops, and that raises to about 80 at this time of year when the students are going back to university. We've got lots of pop-up shops. It has to be very flexible in terms of where we can set up stores. Manchester Metropolitan University, Manchester University, we've currently got about 6 shops operating currently to deal with the students arriving. It's also a chain which doesn't really know how to say no, because it kind of sells books in every format. You know, we do second-hand, we do antiquarian, we do new, we do business to business, business to consumer, everything. If it's got books in it, we kind of do it. And that makes it very complex. We see a lot of customers, specifically this time of year. It's been known as an academic bookshop for a long time, but trying to broaden out, we've got various shops. We've got one in Holborn, for example, which is much more a consumer shop. We've got one in the Wellcome collection, obviously sort of museum and gallery shop as well. We were also the first, apparently, somebody might disagree, but we were the first UK retailer to register a domain name, interestingly. And this is the website that was put up in 1995. A lot of the code for this website was still there when I arrived 2 years ago, which posed some issues. And a lot of the systems in the business are pretty antiquated, very much sort of things that have gone out of license and support and things that are hanging on by their fingertips. We'd have pretty much a unique opportunity in the business. We're currently still family owned, but Toby Blackwell, who's in his late 80s, is not planning on bequeathing the business to his children. He said to us, the staff of the company, that he will gift it to us if we're able to get it to a profitable position and a sustainable one at that. So there's a huge prize in this if we can take the business forward, and we'll become a partnership in the same ilk as the John Lewis partnership. So that's pretty important to remember throughout, actually, because it means the staff have got a massive vested interest in this. This is Benjamin Henry Blackwell, who was our founder back in 1879. But actually, the reason I'm putting this slide up is not so much a picture of him, because kind of, you know, it's the background wallpaper, which is a hand-painted William Morris wallpaper, which is still in the office that sits above the Blackwells in Oxford. Now, William Morris kind of represented a lot of the ethos that we try and look at in the business, which is about craftsmanship and about taking, moving away from just useless toil and work and creating something that has long-lasting impact and has a real craft to it. And we believe that book selling should be a craft. It shouldn't just be an automated factory line of getting books out through the system. It's got an interesting culture, some of which works in interesting ways. This was a sign that was up from the 1970s in the Broad Street shop, which is our largest store. I mean, it basically says nobody's going to talk to you if you're browsing books. So it's pervaded our sense of customer service is that actually customers shouldn't be talked to, they shouldn't be bothered, we should be very quiet and not kind of interrupt them when they're browsing, which is an interesting one nowadays, where, you know, store greeters and stuff are the normal way of doing things. Now, we need to find a happy medium between that and actually moving the staff, many of whom have worked for us from the 1970s, into a sort of modern environment that's a little bit more engaging, I think, has been interesting. So this is now getting on to some of my other problems that we're dealing with as a business. This is probably the largest problem. 129 million books published ever, apparently, according to Google. That's quite a lot, and it's quite a lot to, as a potential product set, to be able to be an intermediary between us and book buyers. And it's got worse and worse every year. When the business first started, there were only 2,000 books published a year. Now it's 2 million books at least, and that's rising and rising. They do say actually that, or the Americans are publishing certainly more and more every day, that we will reach a point of Authorgeddon where there are actually more writers than there are readers in the world, which will certainly give us an interesting challenge. We've also got obviously a significant incumbent. You might have heard of them. I'm not going to say their name. It's become more of a commoditized product because you think, although books are non-substitutional, if you come in and you want a particular title, it's quite hard to say, okay, we'll buy this one instead, certainly if you're a student. Huge growth in titles we've already touched upon, massively complex supply chain, lots of small publishers, lots of different ways to get books through, and hugely expensive to have physical bookshops. So our shop in Oxford has got 160,000 titles on the shelf in there. That's a big capital investment to have those books. It ties up huge amounts of cash. A massively changing market. Obviously, we've seen a instrumentalisation in higher education, people going to university to do more vocational degrees. There's far fewer people doing history as a degree nowadays. They're doing medicine and business and things where they think they're going to get a job that can pay back their student loans. And as I've already inferred, a massive patchwork in our own business between old and new systems. So for us to start to think about engaging with customers and having some sort of technology race against some of the other incumbents and competitors just didn't really seem to us to add up. One, it would need a massive investment. Two, we're never going to win that race. And third, it doesn't really speak to the core competencies and exciting parts of the business that customers engage with us over. So where we felt we needed to go was actually look at what we've got as an asset. And we've got 500 very skilled and interesting booksellers out there. Interesting is the operative word sometimes. And there's a very particular culture to bookselling. Stereotypically sort of quite difficult, overeducated and underpaid. You don't tend to go into the trade in order to make a fortune. But you've got some fascinating people. I mean, Peter McMullen, who works at Oxford, I love this quote where he says, I do use the internet, but it's just easier to know things. We've got a branch in Aberdeen, which has got lots of oil and gas specialists who serve the oil rigs. We've got people in Oxford who look after the dons who buy Greek and Latin texts. You can't really blag your way through that conversation. And it's not really, if you bought this, you'll like this. The correlation coefficient on these things just doesn't work. Only one person has ever bought a copy of whatever it may be. The only thing a system would ever tell you is that probably you could recommend J.K. Rowling because everybody's bought it. So we needed to move away from that. And really our core idea going forward is to be able to, and the systems that we've put in over the last couple of years has been to do two things. One is to try and get to a point, and we're on the cusp of this now, of exposing some of those staff, some of the booksellers that we have on the front end, and actually getting them to be there and to talk about their expertise. So if you say, actually, I'm a, tarantula collector, obsessive, and I'm really interested in X, Y, Z, is that you can start to find the kind of people in our business who are likely to point you in the right direction and to actually form a human resource, not an artificial intelligence, an actual intelligence, that we can draw upon. And certain competitors do not have access to this. There aren't any traditional book-selling chains on or offline which really have the level of depth of knowledge that we have in the business. But in order to make that work, we do need a layer of technology. We also need that technology to work for them in the shops. Now, this is a rubbish drawing I did, and I asked the designer just to make it look like it wasn't scribbled on a piece of paper. But what I'm kind of trying to say, I'm not sure it works really, but everything we've done over the last couple of years, and we've taken the old systems and turned them into a service-oriented architecture where we didn't have to rewrite everything, we just joined it all up. But each time we did that, we exposed it to the staff in the shops. And we gave them the ability to put things on the website, and we gave them the ability to see the supply chain, to work out exactly where all the books are in the UK and international supply chain as well. And that transparency has grown and grown every day. We're adding millions and millions of titles in terms of what they can say to the customers. They can find exactly the books that they need. Because they've kind of got the knowledge that they need to be able to have those conversations, but they didn't have the tools in order to be able to do that. And I get incredibly excited about the thought of actually being able to expose some of these fascinating people to customers wherever they are around the world. And I also think that once we've done that and see how people react to that, because I don't think there are enough faces in e-commerce. I think it's very flat. It's back from it's almost at the end of the last decade, really, in terms of where we've been stuck with this type of product, is that we can start to make the organisation even more permeable around the edges, is to say, well, we've got interesting publishers who want to get access to talk to customers about their products. We've got authors, we've got people who create wonderful products that we don't really, a flat jacket for a book, an ISBN, a price, we've really kind of belittled the product and the conversation in this part. And I think there's a part of the retail industry, and I think there's a huge opportunity to take that forward. Well, that's me just sort of going on about how the old messy systems and service-oriented architecture. And I think I don't know a retailer, unless they're very, very new, who doesn't have this problem, and that very new retailer's probably got the problem by week 2. It's because we've got so many disparate systems. Trying to actually create something that gives us a world view is, I think, almost impossible. But I'm sure I'll be collared by someone at a table outside. We are transparent as we can be with everybody. And I kind of jokingly say, we're a 130-year-old startup. We're trying to run a 500-person scrum. But we do let everybody know everything that's going on and the prioritisation that we go through. And it's as straightforward as sticky notes. And we've got a weekly bulletin now where we say any member of staff can ask any question about anything that we're doing. And they do. These are the booksellers that we talked about. They're the ones who say, you've appointed the wrong person to this role. They'll say, I can't give the best offer on this book. But the active conversation that we've got going on is massively moving us forward in terms of how we're communicating with customers and how we're taking the business forward. And I think it's also growing. Although Blackwellians tend to have a very strong identification with the business, they are getting even more a feeling that they can actually influence the things that are changing. I don't actually have an answer to this question. This was Wolf Olins' recent report around, there's some very positive stuff in there about actually giving more staff and more people in your businesses more ability to change things. And in a way, we're kind of lucky because we've got this shared objective of getting to partnership, although that's fairly ill-defined what happens after partnership. But we can use technology to enable people to take more of a role. I know it, but it can become massively chaotic. But I think it's kind of a good chaos. I think it's a chaos that we need to do in order to utilise the biggest asset in any of our businesses. And I think it's one that a lot of our pure play competitors would really struggle to do. And again, this is another touchstone that we've kind of had. This was from a RSA, a Royal Society of Arts report, when talking about change. Actually, they were talking about change in public sector. But we latched on to this phrase about achieving change means thinking like a system and acting like an entrepreneur. And actually, that kind of represents what we've been doing and what we've been thinking about in terms of delivering more and more value for customers. So I know it's a little bit glib, but it's certainly something that we've fallen back on. And again, we've got a very interesting mix of people. If you're struggling with massive IT change in your businesses, this book is worth checking out. You can get it on blackwells.co.uk, obviously. But this idea that everyone has a joined-up responsibility for technology, everyone has to be able to... sure, some of our staff are never going to they don't have to be particularly technical, but they need to be able to understand how the system works. They need to understand how they can change it and they can influence it. One of the biggest problems still, for a lot of retailers, has been that there's this battle between on and offline, and they say, oh, well, if the sales are going online, what's happening with offline? But actually, the one thing that's helped us overcome that has been the fact that now, this year, all of our shops are up year on year. Our website is over 100% up. Our business-to-business is up. Every single channel is up, and it's because of those systems and because of the ability for people to access them. And now it's kind of, you're seeing the light go on. And it's broken down so many sort of, even with a 500-person company, divisional and shop-into-shop issues. So I suppose in summary, in a way, these have been our sort of key areas of focus. Fast feedback loops, building that into the bulletin. Anyone can email me at any point, and they do all the time. And a lot of that time is re-explaining what's going on and clarifying it, but it's so important, and it's been so useful for me to do that. Relentless, and people felt they couldn't change anything when I started. It was like, well, we've got this really old system, we can't do anything about it. And we've kind of liberated that feeling, is that actually things change now. And that's been massively beneficial. High trust and collaborative, hypothesis-driven. Everyone's got a theory about how something might work. We don't do as much testing particularly. There's a lot of it is quite gut. But I think, if you know your customers and you're pretty experienced in that, then that's actually also very, very good and very useful and good to go with. Some measurement, we do some, and shared objectives. I think my role should become pretty much obsolete within the next couple of years, if I'm lucky, if I've done my job properly. Because I think a digital director role should be a catalyst for change, really. And to if we're going to truly take a business, so it's not even, I don't even like the phrases multi-channel or omni-channel nonsense, but so actually we are focused across customers wherever they want to be at whatever time they want to be. It's always I wanted to get those booksellers on the website before this today, but they will be there imminently. So my final slide, really. We're a 138-year-old startup. Too few of those around. And to truly differentiate is not really about competing on the actual technology side. It's competing with the people that you have and putting them front and centre of the business. And I think for retail, that's crucial, really. So thank you very much.